Wow, this is so stupid. I can't believe it, but the EU von der Leyen, they just banned Bitcoin and crypto here. That's what it says. EU tightens sanctions with a crypto ban. I can't believe it. How can they be so reckless here? I mean, this is about sanctions against Russia, and as part of the sanctions package, all crypto transactions and so on are supposed to be included, are being banned here. So don't worry, this doesn't mean that Bitcoin is now completely banned in the EU, but you can see here they're not shying away from drastic sanctions. And yeah, now you're probably wondering, how can you even ban Bitcoin or crypto if it's supposed to be so censorship resistant, if it's decentralized and all that? We'll take a closer look at that in the video. We also have Vietnam here, where 86 million bank accounts have been frozen, closed, censored, so worldwide, there's total escalation happening everywhere right now. Before we dive in, go ahead and drop a like so Bitcoin can rise even faster and gain even more traction. These videos are reaching the mainstream so that Bitcoin bans and so on won't be possible in the future, because you can only ban something if it doesn't have enough traction yet. If everyone is already on board, if the majority of humanity owns Bitcoin, then it becomes harder and harder to ban it. I mean, technically, you can't really ban it anyway. You can basically only ban it in theory. I'm about to show you why this ban is absolutely ridiculous. To ban Bitcoin, to think that sanctions would somehow decrease on a censorship-resistant network. What the fuck? If the network is censorship-resistant, how could I possibly ban it? People can still use Bitcoin anyway. So let's take a look at this. The underline is right up front again. Of course, they're printing money again here and naturally restricting Bitcoin freedom innovations here. ECB Chief Christine Lagarde hasn't exactly taken a positive stance on Bitcoin either. Now they're simply saying, okay, sanctions are being tightened. This is a BTC Echo article here. The EU is banning crypto payments to Russia in its new sanctions package and is bringing forward an LNG import ban. And here, there's now a very, very explicit entry. How do you say? A passage here, basically the text section where the ban is discussed. And we actually need to start a bit further back. We'll also get to the sanctions, or lack thereof, later on. These are actually acts of censorship happening in other countries. But here it says, secondly, we are targeting the financial loopholes that Russia uses to circumvent sanctions. And that's actually something Christine Lagarde already mentioned in an interview. If there are escape routes, if there are loopholes, if there are ways to get around it, then we have to fight these alternatives. And that's exactly what's going to happen and why they hate Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is an alternative route. If inflation gets too high, then we move into Bitcoin. If we're excluded from the banking system, then we move into Bitcoin. If we're afraid of the banking system, then we move into Bitcoin. Even Larry Fink says, if we're frightened of the government, then we have to get into Bitcoin here. And that's exactly what's happening now. And that's also a signal to people, hey, if they can do that to them, then maybe someday they could do it to other players as well. And then we might have to prepare ourselves for even more, let's say, censorship. Of course, these are foreign countries right now, but it could eventually happen in our own country too. That even more things will be sanctioned in the future, that even more will be censored. And that's exactly why you need Bitcoin in self-custody, which can't be censored. But we'll get into that later, why the censorship here is absolutely nonsensical. You can't sanction Bitcoin the way they're planning to do here. We're imposing a transaction ban on more banks in Russia and on banks in third countries. Of course, that's possible. It's very, very easy to block these transactions within the banking system. We're cracking down harder on these circumvention practices. By the way, that's also what always happens in socialism and so on. People want to get out of the system. People want to get out of the currency. So what do you do then? You simply impose capital controls. Basically, you're not allowed to move money out of the country anymore. That's already happening in China right now, by the way. And now they're taking a similar approach here as well. Instead of making our own country better or attracting capital, they simply ban people from taking their money out of the country. Hey, here's a slightly different story. I don't even want to judge politically whether that's justified or not. You all are welcome to do that. I'm just laying out the facts here. Let's continue here. We're cracking down harder on these circumvention practices. The methods keep getting more sophisticated, but we're adapting our sanctions to stay one step ahead. Lol. Ha ha ha. I think I'm gonna die laughing. They're adapting the sanctions to stay one step ahead. Bitcoin is always one step ahead. Like I said, Bitcoin on your own hardware wallet can't be censored. Here, you have completely censorship-resistant money. And what they can sanction here are just some exchanges, some pseudo-Bitcoin stuff. But anything that's on an exchange isn't really Bitcoin. Anything that's in an ETF isn't Bitcoin. Not your keys, not your coins. If you manage your Bitcoin on your own hardware wallet, if you've generated your own keys, then you truly have Bitcoin. As long as you don't have your recovery words, your 24 words or 12 words, you don't really have Bitcoin either. And that's why it's important to self-custody your Bitcoin, especially when people like Thunderline are freaking out and escalating things. You need to have money outside the system, something you can manage yourself, where you are the one in charge of the vault and the custody. I'll put a link below to a TREZOR hardware wallet, so you can easily, safely, and simply protect yourself from attacks like these. Use the code BitcoinHotel, and you'll even get a discount on a trusted hardware wallet like this. So the thing is, they think they're one step ahead now. They would actually be one step ahead if they really opened up to Bitcoin in a big way. But in reality, they're 10 steps behind. They write that they're ahead of the game here, trying to get out in front of all this. No, you guys are light years behind here, especially if we compare it to the US. Over there, things are handled in a completely different way. For example, there was even a decision recently that Operation Chokepoint 2.0 should be dismantled. That means you can now even be prosecuted if you censor banks that are involved with Bitcoin in any way. If you censor companies that are involved with Bitcoin in any way. All right, and now let's continue here. Now it says here, for the first time, attention, first time, restrictive measures are being imposed against crypto platforms and transactions in cryptocurrencies are being banned. So it's very clear, transactions in cryptocurrencies are supposed to be banned. But once again, Bitcoin is peer-to-peer. Bitcoin doesn't have a third party. How are you supposed to ban a transaction between you and me if we just transfer our Bitcoin from one hardware wallet to another? If we just transfer our Bitcoin back and forth between our hardware wallets? This means there's a fundamental lack of understanding here on the part of the EU, Thunderline, and others. Sure, you could say they can ban it on certain Bitcoin platforms and so on. But I mean, Russia isn't stupid either if they're swapping billions back and forth here. They're not going to do that over some random crypto wallet, or on some crypto exchange or something like that. Of course, they're also going to use self-custody here, maybe with multi-signature or whatever. It's already been said that they're testing Bitcoin for international settlements here. And the thing is, if they already ban it, then people will know, aha, they're banning it. So there must be something interesting about it. Now we have to research it even more closely. And the Russians aren't stupid either. So in my opinion, that's exactly the wrong move. For example, now they want to sanction Russia, which is what's happening here. They're just going to push Russia even further into Bitcoin. Because by kicking them out of the SWIFT system, by basically kicking them out of the traditional banking systems, and now even trying to keep them away from Bitcoin, you're just pushing them even more towards Bitcoin because the Russians aren't stupid either. Of course, they know, hey, as long as I have my Bitcoin in self-custody, in multi-sig or whatever, I mean, they can ban it as much as they want. Couldn't care less. So I find it really funny that the EU actually thinks they can ban cryptocurrency transactions here. We're also listing foreign banks that are connected to Russian alternative payment systems and restricting transactions with companies in special economic zones. So, if I understood this correctly, it means that if banks here have any dealings with Russia, I think they'll also be sanctioned. I'm not sure if I understood that right. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. I just find this a very strange approach. That's exactly what Bitcoin was created for, so that things like this wouldn't happen. And they actually still think they can somehow censor ECPC here. And the same thing isn't just happening here in the EU, it's happening all over the world. We can see here, Vietnam has just frozen 86 million bank accounts because the account holders didn't comply with the new biometric laws, which require a facial scan or fingerprint for account verification. If users don't do this by the 30th, they lose their money. That's why we use Bitcoin. So this is a really drastic move. And I'd also be interested to know if anyone here is actually from Vietnam. Please comment below if this is really true. I've already seen several videos about this, several reports saying that this is actually supposed to be true. That means you basically have to lay yourself completely bare here. You basically have to drop your pants, do a biometric scan, everything possible, you just have to reveal it all. And if you don't reveal that, well, it's not just that your account gets censored or frozen. Your account balance actually gets deleted or basically made irrelevant, meaning you could have millions in your account. The next day, there's nothing left in it. And that's basically the nightmare you absolutely want to avoid. And the crazy thing is, with these scenarios, you could take a negative view and say, oh, they're censoring the money and that's really bad. What are they doing? And they're not allowed to do that. That's theft. That's robbery. But on the other hand, that's the opportunity that Bitcoin presents. The more they censor, the more they overstep, the more they invade your privacy and so on and so forth, the more people will look for alternatives. And what do you think? I'm curious. I haven't checked. But what do you think? How many people here will flock to Bitcoin in droves, especially in Vietnam? Because the thing is, people often only turn to Bitcoin when the pain is there. If the pain isn't there, then people don't come to Bitcoin. Then you think, well, it's still manageable and there are alternatives, this and that. But when the pain gets high enough, that's when people come to Bitcoin. That means everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. But even if someone here has a problem, they can already come to Bitcoin much more easily and earlier, even if the price isn't yet at the point where they might get FOMO. That means you can get caught by FOMO. Maybe a very few people manage it just through research out of curiosity. But most people come to Bitcoin either because of pain or because of FOMO. You can also let me know how you came to Bitcoin. There are always some really crazy stories. One person came because of this problem, another because of that problem. I know people who, for example, got into Bitcoin because they were under 18 at the time. They couldn't make transactions, they couldn't have a credit card, but they could just switch cash into Bitcoin here. And with the Bitcoin they now had, they could buy weapons or whatever else in Counter-Strike, whatever it was they bought. I think there were some packages or something you could buy there. So they bought these packages and then they started thinking, hey, this Bitcoin stuff isn't so bad after all. And that's how some people got into Bitcoin at a really young age. Others, like Michael Saylor, are seeing their reserves melt away and are simply facing the problem of inflation. Still others would actually have their bank accounts frozen, even here in Germany or in Europe. And even if it was just by accident, sometimes it's simply a mistake, it's not always intentional or anything like that. It also happens that people just want to stay liquid, that they want to have some Bitcoin as a backup. There can always be errors in the banking system, but with Bitcoin, that actually doesn't happen. With Bitcoin, it can't happen that the bank says, "Sorry bro, accidentally pressed the wrong button. Your account is locked." So yeah, wild times, folks, with everything going on. Like I said, get a hardware wallet, then that can't happen. If you still want to buy Bitcoin, I'll put a link below for 21 Bitcoin. There you can buy Bitcoin easily, safely, and simply. In the past, attacks like these on Bitcoin have always been a good buying signal, a good, let's say, bottom signal or a good refresh signal to buy even more Bitcoin here. Guys, I'm really glad we have Bitcoin. Use the code BITConverter. Save 20% on fees when buying and saving Bitcoin, and I'll see you. See you then. Peace out.